Pig Trail Nation's Mike Irwin with us on a Monday morning on the Lewis Automotive Hotline. Mike, hope you had a good weekend. Didn't have, things to necessarily cover that you thought you may have to cover on Saturday. So what'd you do with your Saturday instead?
Well, I've determined that I don't think many people care about the spring game anymore because I haven't heard a lot of complaints about that. I mean, it looks like to me, Sam Pittman had said if it rains, we won't do it. And then you could technically claim that rain was in the forecast, but they made that decision Saturday morning, and it turned out there was no rain. I don't see a lot of people mad about it. I think people understand they don't want to. It wasn't going to be on TV anyway. They want to let the media shoot it. It was. They just, until this portal thing changes at the end of the spring, I just think coaches are nervous about other coaches looking at what they do in a spring game and then saying, hey, I like this guy. Maybe we can snatch this guy or that guy. So maybe if we get this portal thing changed for next year, we'll see a spring game. But until this football program starts becoming more relevant in the SEC, I just don't see the interest overall in people showing up for a spring game.
Well, I think you're onto something. I think you're right, and you got to have a little more success to I think pique the interest. But I want to ask you about the basketball team and kind of your thoughts on our gets there. Mike, I think that this Arkansas Razorback, John Calipari, will make at least one Final Four in the next 3 years. I really do believe that. Do you think this next year, the way it's lining up, that we're going to have the talent where you think this next year could be the year for the basketball team?
I think the whole key is how those two bigs he got. Pringle, he's a little bit inconsistent, but he's a good defensive player, and he occasionally does have a really big offensive game. Florida State transfer, it's the opposite. He's kind of has he's a tremendously exciting big to watch because he's mobile and he can do all these under the backward reverse, under the underarm layups and do all this crazy stuff, and he's a pretty good shooter. So he'll score points. He wasn't much of a defensive player, but I've read things that indicate that Florida State's defense was kind of a switching type defense, and he got a little bit confused with that some, and so they might not do that here. But I think the key is those guys plus Brazil. If he plays like he played toward the end of the season, then I think they've got three guys in there that can make a real difference. They lost Ament to Tennessee, which the word I got was that he was asking $3 million. And the quandary that Calipari had was if you pay him that money, then you probably lose Wagner, you don't retain him, and you probably don't get the shooter that you wanted, the shooter/scorer that you needed to replace Nellie Davis. So I think they came out really good. And the main thing is you return a core of players, because I think Wagner's back now, and I think
And what I'm saying, too, if Knox comes back, I know he entered the NBA draft, but I think Knox is a heck of a player.
Yeah, the word on him is, and a lot of guys do this, he goes in there and he works out in front of NBA scouts. They tell him what he needs to work on. So he'll be ready next year to maybe be a first-rounder. So that's a smart thing for him to do, and I think he'll be back. And I think you've got four guys, if you throw Brazil in there and Billy Richmond, you've got four guys that were all on this team, that were all part of a Sweet 16, team, and they're all coming back, and they were with this coach at this school playing in this conference. And I think there's a value to that, the experience factor.
So, there's so much basketball talk now because it's free agency in basketball right now. Why wouldn't there be? And the idea that maybe people are more interested in one sport over the other. I can see that. I can see that with basketball. I feel that too. And I think the success has a lot to do with it, obviously, and the coach. And I think the projection of what that means into the near future. And I think a lot of us would agree that you're probably, the expectation is that you will be a Final Four participant at some point. Is this going to be a topic in August? Right? It's because usually right now you'd be talking, maybe recapping a little bit of the basketball season, but it would be spring football. It would be the portal in football because that would get some interest. You had four defensive players that joined the program. Be baseball too. But is there going to be you'll know what the roster looks like in July and in August. You know, Chuck and Bo had a whole segment, not a whole segment. They did about an hour and a half about, is this a basketball or a football school? It's a legitimate question because of what people are interested in. Do you think that basketball like overtakes football in terms of discussion and interest, even as we move in towards football season in the summer, Mike?
Well, we'll see, but I wouldn't say no. The problem that Pittman has is they're going to have to do more than, win 6 or 7 games and get in a bowl game. Okay, you won a bowl game, that's good, but they've got to continue to improve. Now, he's had good success. Now, the complaint I read about some of these new portal additions, I think there are 4 of them the last time I checked, the numbers were off the charts. Some of these guys, have one of these linebackers had over 100 tackles. So you look at all these numbers, but then you look at where they played. But Pittman has a history of bringing in even D2 players like Isaac Tesla and bringing in Andrew Armstrong from a low-mid major. And they come here. Andrew Armstrong ended up arguably the best receiver in the SEC. He was a first-team All-SEC player and led the conference in receiving yards and total catches. So he has a history of developing these guys. I think football, it all boils down to the changes they made in the offensive line. They've got a new left tackle. They moved Carmona into left guard. You've got a new center. And then you've got this 6'8", 360-pound guy that's a redshirt freshman out of Oregon that I think they were all raving about him the other day. By maybe a few games in, maybe he's moved into that right tackle spot. So if you rebuild, if the offensive line is significantly better, okay, that's good. And when we listen to Petrino, what did he talk about? He said the one thing he feels really good about is Taylon Green. But then he said, I've never had a team where there's so many new parts. They've got to find some go-to receivers. They got to find out, do they really have a running game? So there's just so many questions, and then the schedule is just much tougher than it was a year ago.
And sure, he has. That's a coaching speak. He's hopped over different teams every other year, so he's had new teams, so he knows how to do this. That's just kind of I don't really like it when a coach says that. It's like that's the new wave, and you've been a different coach at 5 different coaches the last 9 years. You've had different teams.
Yeah, I mean, but again, as I look at it, I still think running game is I worry more about the receivers than anything else because I watched Taylon Green last year. If he doesn't have go-to guys, and he'll pick 2 or 3 guys out, and that's who he'll target. And if he doesn't have that, then what do we see him doing? Running all the time. So you don't want that, and I think it won't happen, but I can't be for sure. They need a running game to go along with it. But the fact is that I look at that schedule, and I see who they have to play on the road this year. You don't get Tennessee at home. You got to go to Tennessee on the road. It's just
at Austin as well.
Yeah, at Austin, and then look, the early part of their schedule is not a walk. I mean, I'm looking at that Arkansas State game and going, is that a trap game? I mean, I don't think they'll lose that game, but if they do, watch out. And then they got to go to Memphis. I mean, so the schedule is the schedule was much more favorable to them last year. So they're going to have to be a lot better just to kind of do what they did a year ago. And that doesn't cut it. You don't need to be winning 7 games. If you want Arkansas fans excited, you got to win 9 or 10. And that's tough in this conference. So I don't know where we're headed with that. I mean, I know what Yurichek's attitude is. We start changing head coaches right now. We need money. They've got to come up. There's no athletic director that Arkansas has ever had that has the issues that Yurichek faces right now. He's got to come up with about $20.5 million to pay players under revenue sharing next year that wasn't in the budget this year. And everybody's getting mad at him because he's raising basketball prices. He did baseball a few years ago. He's got to have money. And even that doesn't guarantee success. But at least if you've got a salary cap, no one team is sitting there outbidding and stealing players from you because they've got more money than you do. So, it's just you're trying to figure out where this thing is headed. And I don't know where it's headed with football. I really don't. We could still end up with that super conference. And Arkansas might want to be in that thing, but if they get in it, that's even more problems because you're not going to be at the high end of that 32-team super conference. You're going to be at the low end of that in terms of revenue and money and all this stuff. So long term, is this a basketball school? It has been for a long time, and it's a baseball school. The fans get excited around here in basketball season under Musselman and in baseball season under Van Horn, and there hasn't been a lot to be excited about in football lately.
Yeah, it's about it's about how your fans perceive each program. It's the same as like in a big league city. It's all the teams are owned. Most of them are owned by different ownerships. But if you listen to sports talk radio, you get a chance to sense how the fans feel about one pro sports team over the other. Just from where I'm from, and I still listen to Pittsburgh sports talk every once in a while. They're always going to talk Steelers and Penguins over the Pirates because those are two programs that win and right. Bring glory to the city. I mean, I think that's how people view basketball and baseball at Arkansas, especially right now with John Calipari as the coach for men's basketball. They just view it differently than football. But I think that also doesn't necessarily mean, look, whether or not it's your favorite sport or whether or not your school is just sort of viewed in a certain way as to one sport over another, I think football is people's favorite sport here. I don't think that's ever going to change.
Well, you have more people watching it for sure. You're never going to draw 70,000 to a home basketball game or a baseball game. It doesn't work that way. So you're going to have more football fans that go to games, but still, when you talk about the discussion, I mean, look at the two names, Calipari and Van Horn. Both of those are when you talk about national discussions of national media as those seasons play out, those two names pop up all the time. In football, how many times do you hear people talking about Sam Pittman? You just don't. And I'm not trying to downgrade the guy. I think he's got a good staff. And if this staff, if they continue to work and put things together, I think they'll get where they need to go. But right now, he's just not a big name. So Arkansas doesn't get discussed nationally. And fans notice that kind of stuff. They're watching, Feinbaum, and Feinbaum hardly ever talks about Arkansas. They're watching other podcasts, and you don't hear Arkansas mentioned very often in football. And some fans like that because, okay, we're being overlooked. We're going to be really good this year, and we're going to surprise a lot of people. But I think most fans get frustrated by that.
BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for all your sports betting action. Baseball season is in full swing, and we're into the home stretch for NBA and NHL playoffs. BetOnline has more ways to stay in on the action with the latest odds, news, and scores, even live in-game betting while the games are being played. With the largest selection of odds on everything from the MLB, NHL, and UFC, BetOnline remains the number one online source for all your sports wagering information. In between games, head over to BetOnline Casino with all the top Vegas-style games, including poker and live casino. BetOnline, the game starts here.